So a few months ago I discovered a bug in Emscripten, which means it was pretty hard to use in a node context. The bug was that standard input wasn't dealt with correctly, and it kind of makes sense because Node isn't really meant to make input or output synchronously very easy. It's really designed for asynchronous output or input. The output does work well enough anyway, but every time we wanted to get some data from the keyboard in a console way, things did not go well. This is an example program that shows the problem. I'm allocating a buffer on the stack, and I'm trying to get a line from the keyboard, and you can see it doesn't work. Let's compile that program, and there we go. Run it. And as you can see, I didn't even have keyboard access. The program didn't give me access. I couldn't type anything because the line was basically skipped. The program assumed that nothing was inputted inside of name, and it said, well, you entered nothing. I'm really sorry about that. Goodbye. And that's the bug. So I decided to dig into Emscripten and try to figure out what went wrong and how I could fix it. I made actually a small file to help me develop the fix. And the first thing I did, obviously, is download Emscripten. Haha! The name is so difficult to say. Download Emscripten, read the documentation on the website to compile it, and try to run the test and things like that. I tried to figure out how I should kind of understand how the Emscripten worked, and I ended up doing a grep on Emscripten over every instance of the word standard in, and I kind of found a few things that seemed kind of interesting. This one was actually the important part. So this is a file in which you're trying to set things up for different environments, and particularly try to set up the TTYs, the virtual consoles. And this is actually the way things are in the code right now. There is a huge commented portion of this and a huge commented portion of that, in which there is a doubly commented portion of an IRC copy and paste, basically. And this used to work, I assume, but it doesn't anymore, and that's probably why it is commented in the first place. So that's unfortunate. And by reading at the IRC log, apparently process that standard in used to work in a certain way. It doesn't anymore, probably because they switched the streams 2 years ago or something like that. But the beef of the problem now is that Node isn't really meant to do synchronous stuff, and it doesn't deal well with getting data synchronously from the keyboard in a command line environment. The first thing that was kind of a bit hard was to figure out a way to make Node read synchronously from the keyboard independently of Emscripten. And that's kind of what I tried to do in buffer 5 here. So that's purely a Node script. It's not Emscripten, it's something I did on the side. I published it as a gist a long time ago now. I wanted to simply get a line of input from the user in a synchronous manner. And that's basically how I use it. I call getLine, things block until getLine returns, and when it does return, it prints out something, and then it blocks on the second line and it prints the second line, which you can see if I run it and I say, well, I have to input the first line, so I'm going to say first line. So the important thing here is the fact that this console log doesn't get run until this, which blocks the program, gets run. And then once this is done, it blocks until this gets run, and then it runs the second line. There we go. So that's the basic idea. And the way it works is getLine has a small buffer called stdio in which it stores extra data. But that's not really important. The really important part is that getLine runs getStdio, which is a function that takes a byte of data to look for, in this case, a new line. As soon as it finds a new line, it returns the line it read. And the reason it's synchronous is that in this piece of the code, we try to get the function, the file descriptor of stdio, which unfortunately is kind of it depends on the platform, right? So this works in Windows, I believe, but Linux and Mac can't deal with this file descriptor because it's not set up as synchronous, and therefore we have to reopen it in an asynchronous manner, which works by using RS for some reason. I had to look it up. I can't make it out myself. And then there are some differences in the way it works and in the way we have to close the file, but otherwise it works just by saying I want to read some data synchronously from this function this file descriptor, and I get some bytes and I store those bytes in a buffer and I return the buffer at the end. So that's the basic idea. And I want to implement exactly that inside of Emscripten. So that's what I wanted to do. And let me see. I think the first thing I was looking at when I tried to fix it was buffer3 here. So this is a function. So this is the whole file in which we try to set up everything to fake the file system. So it's a kind of fake file system that tries to understand the real file system and tries to simulate it. And there are a number of interesting things in order to convert every file to the same interface, which is going to be a stream. And this piece right here, this function and the next function, are the interesting bits. So in this function, we create weird files like devnull or devtty and devtty1. And in the next function, we're actually going to use devtty and tty1 in a weird way. We're going to say, okay, we have to set up standard in, standard out, and standard err. And in order to do that, the main way we can do it is to symlink the fake devtty that we just created in the file before, and symlink it to standard in so that every time we receive standard in, it works. And you symlink tty 2 times, one for standard in and one for standard out, and then you symlink tty1 to standard err only once. And you try to use to open them once and for all, but as I said, this opening doesn't work because this is the fake file system. And where we open standard in for real is where we open devtty for real. And where is that? Well, we set up devtty in buffer 7, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, right there. So streamops is basically some kind of conventional interface that Emscripten uses to deal with files. So it has an open primitive, a closed primitive, flushing, reading and writing. And the real stuff is right here, inside of those operators, which are just underlying it, and which are used above, I believe. Let me check. Actually, I have no idea. Is it even used somewhere? Default TTY ops. It has to be. Yeah, see, so it's used in library.fs, which is the other file that we looked at. I have no idea where, actually. Out of curiosity, 1240. 1240. What function is that? Create default device. Oh, that's the function we looked at. Yes. So that's where it hooks up the fake file system to those real file system operations. Let's get back here. And so basically, this part that is commented is the fix that I made. And it copies a lot of the code from the file that I showed before. So it's not really interesting to look at, because I explained everything already. And this, which is the old code, assumed that it would work by reading synchronously from process.in.read, but that doesn't work, as we said, because in Node, process.in is a file descriptor that was set up asynchronously, and it can't go back from that. So what I have to do is, let's comment this code. There we go. Let's close this code. What I have to do is open the standard in file as binary every time and close it. Or try to use that, which usually doesn't work, but only works in Windows. If we say that, and if we try to compile that getline.cpp file that we used as test, basically, let's run it, and this time we can enter a line of text, and we get it out back. And just out of curiosity, I want to try to compile it using a real C++ compiler. Let's say a native C++ compiler. There is no real thing. Getline, yep. And it's going to be getline. A line of text. Enter. Yep, it works exactly the same way. Except for some reason for one new line here, but I don't really care about it. So now that this is done, and this old code can go, the interesting part is to run the test. I believe, yeah, they explain how to run the test here. It's a bit confusing. Basically, you have to run test.runner, and then you have to look for a test which you want to exploit, and in this case I want to look at buffer4, which, as you can see, funnily enough, basically says I'm going to test standard in, and if it's Node, I have no idea what I'm doing, so let's forget about it. And that's actually the way I found it. So let's fix that. I don't want a continue here, I want an actual test. As you can see, the name of the thing is test/test other. The other bit is the important thing. So you have to say other dot, and then here it is test standard in, so you have to say standard in, I believe, or something like that, I think. Browser dot, you have to say test. So tests underscore standard in. That's right. It is indeed. And it runs the test, which basically, in this case, does practically nothing. But it works. Let's fix it and do something useful. So the thing that we wrote to this file is supposed to get outputted by running this a.out thing. And the file that is supposed to do that is called tests modules, tests module, tests standard in. Okay, what does this test do? I suppose it's like my getLine cpp file. Maybe. Ifdef Emscripten set main loop. SM shell doesn't implement an event loop and therefore doesn't support Emscripten set event loop. Okay, main loop. Main loop. Does this file actually do anything useful? Get character from standard in. Standard in, okay. Ret. What does ret do? Okay, so there's a loop. We get everything out until we get add a file. Okay, so what was the file like? Continue. So I don't want to continue. I want to do the test. Right? They're not happy. Let's delete that. Does it work? I want it to work. Please, work. Yes. Try it. I believe it should work. So you're the test. You're the program. And both of you have no idea what's going on. So let's kill you. See what's going on. What in the... What happened? What is this, a loop? Is this a joke to you? What is... What? Okay, so it was an infinite loop that was running. I bet the problem is... And what did I do here? Oh, I removed the space. Fair enough. So I bet the problem is here. I bet that's the issue. Or maybe I'm not getting the end of the output I don't know. So this is 2 weeks later. I basically realized that since it worked in Bash and didn't work in Python, it had to be a bug in Python in some way, or a bug in Node. But I didn't really find a bug in Node, and to be honest, I believe the bug is in Python's subprocess library, which is what Python uses for forking, for popen. And I suppose it does something like interact with the script or with Node in a strange way, which causes it to loop over the input from standard in, or from, you know, the pipe. And yeah, so you probably wonder where we are using Popen, and basically what we use usually is run.js. And where is run.js used? It's used in, let me see, probably JS run, maybe. Yep, run.js is defined here. I changed the code a little bit. It didn't look like this before, but I only added this function, like a make command function, which basically constructs the function to run in Popen. And then once you have this command here, which is made there. So for example, the command would be node a.out.js, which is the output of Emscripten, and you perform the pop in here. And this doesn't work because for some reason passing standard in like that doesn't work in this specific case. I don't know why. I have no idea. I didn't dig far enough inside of Python to understand why. But since it worked using the system's shell, what I was recommended to do was to simply say, hey, if we are using Windows, the test should run using OS system and with this command. And otherwise, in Mac or in Linux, just use the conventional shell thing to do and check the output so that it's correct. And that works. So, naturally, I submitted a pull request back to Emscripten and it got accepted. So this is it. So this is basically merged in incoming, which is the default development branch, and in some date in the future it's going to be merged in master, and everybody will be able to use standardized in Node. So that's the end. There we go. Goodbye.